Up first, I'm very pleased to say that it's Sandro Forte who's going to be speaking, Chartered Financial Planner and CEO of Forte Financial Group. And he is going to be speaking to us this morning about future-proofing your business. Sandro, screen sharing is active and you are good to go.
Thank you, Ed. Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Great to see you all and very happy Christmas to you all in advance. I'm going to break with tradition today and whiz through an awful lot of slides in a very short space of time. But I'm going to do so because over the last couple of years, the success of my business, and I hope the same is true of you too, seen an opportunity with COVID and all the unfortunate things that's brought, but definitely an opportunity, I think, for all of us, as has been discussed on previous meetings. And I've also been running a masterclass for a group of advisors in Canada. And what I'm going to share with you today, which you won't have seen from me before, a big sigh of relief from lots of you that have seen me speak before. These are kind of some of the highlights, the feedbacks that I've had from that group of people that have made a significant impact on their business as a reflection of some of the things that I've been doing in mine. And the reason why I've entitled the presentation Future Proofing Your Business is because there are two issues really, I think, for all of us. One is the acquisition of new business. And we've seen lots of presentations from people, not just in the MDRT meetings each month, but across our networks and all the other ways that we interact with fellow professionals. But I think there's another aspect that many of us are in danger of overlooking. And unless you've been hiding under a stone, we'll all be aware, of course, that there is an awful lot of regulatory change going on, particularly around the servicing of clients. So I'm going to focus very much on retention today, if I may. But before I do, I'm going to share with you a little slide that was put together. This isn't mine, but it's something I've been using over the years. And I just thought it was pertinent to mention it to and share it with you today as we start a new year, 2022. And what this is a pictorial example and a reminder of the different aspects of our respective lives where we should really be cognizant of balance or sometimes imbalance. So feel free to print this off if you want to. Ed's got the slides. He'll be distributing those after this session today. But it's just a timely reminder that sometimes, despite the fact we think we're busy and successful and we're having a record year or not, as the case may be, sometimes we succeed to the detriment of others, those unintended consequences that we've heard MDRT mention so often in the past. So it's just a little pictorial example. And all you do is you just score yourself out of, in this particular case, 7, but you can score yourself out 10. And it's just a little reminder of the different aspects of our lives and just being aware of what's going on. Just a little kind of year-end thing to remind ourselves. The reason why I'm just mentioning the word language is Ed, I'm sure you agree, his presentation last month was fantastic, I thought. And one of the things that I've noticed over the last few sessions is this language, the MDRT, the financial services language that we tend to use, and I think we take it for granted. And I'll give you 2 specific examples. We don't have time to examine them all, but I'm sure you'll latch on to what I'm talking about here. But one of those words would be the word referral, and I hear that word a lot. And there is an awful lot of data, scientific study around the use of language, particularly relating to financial services. And for me, a referral is a name and a telephone number. And I don't know about anyone on this call today, but I don't want to work with suspects. I want to work with prospects. And I would like to think my business has moved an awful long way away from making cold calls using names and telephone numbers. So perhaps we should get into the habit of using personal introductions as an alternative to referral. And the other one that I hear an awful lot, again, which is just part of the language that we use in financial services, is the word appointment. And if we perhaps change the word appointment to meeting, there is, again, scientific study that supports the fact that 17% more people will maintain a meeting than an appointment, because most people subconsciously believe that appointments are there to be cancelled because that is an association they have with the other appointments they have with doctors and dentists and so on. So just a couple of, throwaway comments, but I think important in terms of helping ourselves to improve every component part of our businesses, a bit like the Japanese car manufacturing theory. The positioning bit, this is probably, certainly in terms of my business and the businesses I've shared this with, has had the biggest impact on retention of clients, particularly through the process of onboarding. I'm going to come on to talk about servicing specifically in a minute, because that, after all, is what the title of the presentation is. But the positioning bit is really about financial advisors, professionals like ourselves, MDR team members, taking control of the client relationship. And I know this sounds really basic stuff to most of us, but the fact of the matter is we still adopt, and that's the collective we, the community we still adopt a very subservient approach when it comes to client relationships. Specifically, we find ourselves saying, you know, if you would like to become a client, if you decide that I'm going to be your financial advisor. And one of the ways that I overcome and almost reverse engineer that process is to create a positioning piece at the very first meeting. So before the fact find meeting starts, many people refer to it as ice breaking. To me, ice breaking is, you know, just a bunch of meaningless words that people feel obliged to come out with before the meeting proper starts. For me, positioning is about two things. When I sit a new prospect down, the rules of engagement are very much as follows. There are two reasons why we are meeting this evening. The first one is to understand whether we like, trust, and can work with each other. And the second reason is for me to see if I can help you. Now, I don't know if I can do that at the moment. What I'm going to do is gather some information in confidence, of course. And then at the end of that process, we'll look to see whether or not we can meet those specific financial objectives that you might have. But of course, the quality of advice I'm able to give you is based on the quality of information you give to me. And by positioning it in that way, because we're now going to come on to talk about some of the other issues, the elephants in the room, if you like, that we often find ourselves coming up against, whether it's the fee objection, whether it's adverse publicity, whether it's their perception of financial advisory from maybe a previous experience, all of those things that often go on to become what we refer to as objections. You have the opportunity to lay them out at the first meeting as part of that positioning piece. There is, if you're interested, a script for this. If you want it, just let me know and I'll be happy to send it to you. And then the next part of that, which follows, is something called a meeting report. Again, I'm sure many of you do this, but my meeting report is really, let me refer to it as a bridge between the first and the second meeting. So we've done the fact find. And what I was finding in the past was that having done what I'd like to think is a pretty good fact find, there was this kind of hiatus between the first meeting and the second meeting. And inevitably, I was finding myself having to almost reinvent the whole process at the second meeting, because the client was saying, I can't really remember what happened and something's changed. And you'd end up having to back up, almost restart the process, and then lose lots of time, and 2-meeting agenda would become a 4-meeting agenda. And so what I do is I provide a very simple report. Sometimes it can run to many pages, depending on the objectives that have been outlined by the client at the first meeting. But essentially it covers 3 things. Background information, which is simply a summary of the fact find information, which you'll see when you get a copy of these slides. Then the second one is their financial objectives. So a very, very simple summary of their key points that they've talked about at that first meeting. And then the third part is outline observations. Please note, that's not recommendations, it's observations. So at this stage, all I'm doing is making mention of a few strategies they might like to think about. And what I say to a client before I leave the first meeting is there will be a report that will be sent to you, and there will be one of 3 outcomes as a result of this meeting and this report that follows. The first one is you will decide to do nothing. The second one is you will decide to execute yourself or go elsewhere. And the third one is that we will work together. And the reason I position it like that is that you introduce this idea at various stages along the way that the client can be as rejected by you as you can by them. So positioning it in such a way and using language that helps the client to understand it's a 2-way process is very important. Now, obviously, again, I will add the little caveat that I know because I know most of you individually, you're all very successful. So I'm sure you do stuff like this, but I think it's very important to, again, remain cognizant of the fact that there is a process that we should examine every now and again. And to Ed's, he made a point last month about having fun in this business. And I just wanted to remind everyone that I think that's a very important part of the process, particularly if you're achieving success. Work-life balance is one thing, but having fun along the way is another. So one of the things that you may or may not know, if you ever emailed me and got my out of office, you will probably be aware of the fact that my out of office looks a little bit like this, and you won't be able to see it, I don't think, on the screen. So I will read it to you. And it basically says, thank you for your email. I'm currently out of the office until whatever date it is. And I know I'm supposed to say I have limited access to emails and won't be able to respond until I return, but that's simply not true. My phone will not leave my side and I can respond to messages if I need to. I accept the fact I will probably need to interrupt my holiday periodically to deal with something urgent. That said, I promise my better half I'm going to try and disconnect, get away, enjoy my holiday as much as possible. And to be quite honest, I'm terrified of her. If your email truly is urgent and you need a response, please email Vicky in the first instance. Last year, I got 11 new pieces of business from professional connections. I refer to them as connections, solicitors, accountants, etc. And it's been 9 so far this year. I just get messages from typically professionals and often clients saying, what a fantastic out of office response, the best one I've ever seen. And I think what it does is it just reminds people that, financial advisors, are human beings. We do like to have a bit of fun. And so, may I suggest respectfully that if your out of office just says, I'm away until, it's just one of those bog standard responses, maybe think about jazzing it up a bit. Let me put it like that. Okay, so the retention through service piece, very, very important in terms of the sustainability of our businesses moving forward. And I just want to share a couple of quick points in the time that I've got left. Clearly, a lot of regulatory change going on around service. And what are we doing would be the question to make sure that we have longevity in terms of relationships and that we are conducting service reviews. But most importantly, and this is the key message from this session, what are we doing that is specific to the client requirement? So a couple of examples, and I will precede what I'm about to say with a very, very simple equation. Because reputation is experience minus expectation. And as long as we keep that in mind, we will never go far wrong in terms of the client relationship, and particularly in terms of retaining great client relationships well into the future. So reputation is experience minus expectation. I know we've heard this a million times before. Do what you say you're going to do, exceed expectation, go above and beyond. I get all of that stuff, but the only way that we can find out whether or not somebody is going to be provided with the level of service that they specifically require is to ask what I call the killer question. And the killer question is very simple. When you get to the second meeting and you are looking to onboard the client, there's an agreement between two people to work together. The killer question is this: what does great service look like to you exactly? And the word exactly is a very, very important part of that question. What does great service look like to you exactly? Because a divorcee who is very vulnerable will have a number of requirements, probably regular meeting requests at the outset, whereas a trader in the city with a good deal of financial knowledge probably won't require the level of hands-on service that you would provide to the divorcee in this particular case. The moment that somebody is asked, give me this information exactly, what does great service look like exactly, they will specify exactly what great service looks like. And if you then go back to the former equation, providing a level of service that exceeds or at least matches expectation, you don't lose clients. And that's one of the things that I think probably the most important part of the business model that we're building at Forte Financial. Last year, we had a record year, and although we'll be slightly behind last year because it was pretty exceptional, we're not going to be far off. But the important thing is, in addition to acquiring new clients, we're not losing them either. So that's an important part of the process. Now, the other thing I just wanted to share as well was the fact that, we are all busy professionals. We're all successful in our own way, whatever success looks like to each of us. And one of the things I'm very aware of is the fact that my time is limited, as is each of yours. So one of the things that we have in our business is a telephone, let's call it a triage service. So when the meeting, the service meeting comes around, one of my team normally calls the client and goes through a very simple pro forma to understand, Sarah, has anything changed? Let's just find out kind of where you are. And what that does is it presents a window of opportunity to then feed back to me or one of the advisors to go see the client if there's clearly an opportunity, rather than find yourself trek halfway across the country, have a lovely cup of tea and a chat and find out there's actually no requirement to be seeing this particular client. So telephone review. There is a deliberate mistake in this form, and I'm wondering if anybody spots it before I finish my presentation. If they do, I have a Christmas gift for them, but it's a very deliberate mistake going back to, I'll give you a clue, going back to what I said earlier about language. So I will allow you maybe in the chat to suggest what the answer might be. There's a deliberate mistake on this particular form. Okay. The ongoing servicing requirements form, that's a form that we fill in with our clients when they tell us what great service looks like exactly. And then we also have a review decline letter. So where a client declines a review, what we've found is that by writing to them to confirm that they don't want a review, we convert 14% of those people who originally verbally said they didn't want to review. So again, I'm sure that's something that you do, but if you don't, it will have a pretty significant impact on the number of conversions from lost opportunity to opportunity. And then the referral questionnaire, going back, deliberate mistake again, personal introduction questionnaire. I'll give you the answer to that one. Interested to see if anyone's come up with the answer to the previous deliberate mistake. But the referral questionnaire, again, visibility. I've heard the word iconic. If you want to create an iconic business in financial services, there are three essential things that we need to have. One is personality. Now, the personality of the business, I don't mean individually. So that might be things like out of office, birthday telephone calls, handwritten notes to say thank you for a personal introduction. That's all part of the personality, like Apple have personality, like Starbucks have personality, for example. Then it's the educational piece, standing for something, giving people the confidence that you know what you're talking about and making the complicated simple. And the third one, most important of all, is visibility. And one of the things that we've tried and tested over the years that we've come to realize is that 5 touch points is the optimum number of connections with a client during a year. So a touch point is anything from, a quarterly newsletter to a birthday telephone call to an interaction on social media, anything like that. And by the way, on the subject of social media, if you are using LinkedIn and you're messaging people, may I respectfully suggest that you don't send the bog standard, I'm looking to expand my network, how about connecting with me? Because that makes it all about you rather than about the person you're trying to connect with. If you, on the other hand, say something like, I have a growing network or I have a great network, which I think would add value to you, can we connect? That then flips it around and makes it very much about the other person. You'll get an awful lot more interaction in social media if you turn it the other way around. So I would say those 3 things are very important when you're talking about building a business that becomes iconic, because if you have an iconic business, people come to you, not the other way around. And goodness knows, over the last 2 or 3 centuries, prospecting has been one of the hardest things for people to develop. And then a couple of final things. One of the things I see in financial services a lot is these beautiful brochures that people spend loads and loads of money on. And I'm going to credit Sarah with this particular idea because she was the person who alerted me to vouch for. And I can see from her banners and the various emails I get from Sarah that she's highly thought of and vouched for. And it's a platform that people are starting to recognize. So what we did is we created a PDF brochure that we send to clients ahead of our first meeting to give them, if you like, a bit of a CV. So we've kind of dispensed with the hard copy brochure. And what you'll see in front of you now in the next 4 slides, I'll just flick through them. You'll see them on the copies when you receive them, is a number of testimonials from clients that talks of integrity and honesty and great service and knowledgeable advice and all these other things. And as you'll see on page 1, there's a few links to articles that I've written, and I know all of you have done the same. So we have found that this brochure, a PDF brochure, has been the greatest part of this new process that we've adopted this year in terms of onboarding new clients, because people are often looking to read between the lines when it comes to brochures. Brochures say so much, but they don't really lift the lid on your business, your personality, and the way you look after clients in terms of an end-to-end process. So those are the 4 parts of the brochure. And then the final thing that I want to share with you about being proactive in our business. When things go wrong, financial advisors have a tendency to pull the metaphorical duvet over their head and wait for the good times to return. When, unfortunately, we were struck with this global pandemic, which I think we're going to be dealing with for a few years to come, we, again, take no credit for this. We went to an outside company. We sought some help. I think it cost us about £600. They produced a 79-page how to deal with COVID brochure and we sent it to 450 people. It reached over 3,000 people because people were encouraged to pass it on. And we had about 70 new inquiries as a result of this magazine that we sent out. If you want the full copy, very happy to send it to you. Still quite relevant, actually. And I can even put you in touch with the company that produced it for us if you wish. The final thing in terms of visibility for professionals, one of the big wins that we've had is with something called an at-a-glance card. It is a simple reminder, corporate on one side, personal on another, for professional people like accountants and solicitors. It's a hard laminated card which they keep on their desks because unfortunately we can't communicate with professionals, every week, looking to see whether or not they've got people to recommend. But by leaving a permanent reminder of what we do somewhere on or near their desks, again, it's a very good way to generate professional introductions. Have a conversation with you offline if you want to know more about that. But again, I think we've ended up with about 40 new referrals from or personal introductions from professionals this year as a result of the at-a-glance card. So if anybody's got any answers to the question earlier, what was the deliberate mistake? I don't see any extra chat in the chat. I will tell you the answer. Instead of using the word review when you go to see a client, use the word planning, because review suggests that you're looking backwards, whereas planning suggests you look forwards. So again, a very minor change, but it makes a big difference in terms of the positioning piece for each of the clients that you interact with. And that, I think, is 25 minutes. I can't believe I did 19 slides in 25 minutes, but there we are. I'm now exhausted.